When it comes to old school PVM legends, names like Wooks and Exact probably come to mind. And while these gamers have certainly earned their titles through seemingly impossible feats, world firsts, and pure mechanical skill, the world of boss speedrunning has produced its very own heroes. MolGoatKirby is the man behind some of the game's most impressive world records and the innovator of several revolutionary speedrunning tricks. As the creator of the game's most comprehensive guide to tackling the combat achievements, he's also your one-way ticket to obtaining your very own Zuck Helm. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Kirby to pick his brain on boss world records, secret PVM strategies, and what exactly it takes to complete RuneScape's most insane Grandmaster combat tasks. Kirby, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Could you briefly just introduce yourself for anyone who might not have seen your content before?
Sure. So I'm at MolGoatKirby. I stream old school RuneScape and make videos. I'm known for the Kirby skip, a solo CM rub skip. I've done, a lot of attempts to gain world records, made a lot of guides on combat achievements. Probably, that's another thing I'm known for quite a bit for. Made a bunch of guides for TOA and yeah, just that kind of gives you an idea of what I'm known for and what I do.
Awesome. And yeah, you kind of touched on it, but you've held a lot of different world records for fastest boss KC in the game. And if you're okay with it, I'd kind of like to start with maybe diving into some of that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. So maybe could you just touch on some of the different bosses and pieces of content that you've held world records for?
Well, I think one of the first ones I got the solo chambers world record a few years ago. Um, it was funny enough, I was actually tied with Addy down to a tick, and we had the tied record for like a couple of months. And we're kind of known as looking similar, so people kind of mistake us. So it's kind of funny. We literally had a tied world record of all things. Um, I got the Poseidon's world record after it came out. Held it for like about a month until Vodka got that insane 606 time, which is just that was kind of absurd. Um, but yeah, so I had that one. I set the in leagues free. I've still been meaning to put this up on YouTube. I set the 7.2 second Historia world record, which was like, yeah, I still haven't put on YouTube, so maybe not as many people have seen that one. But it was really interesting the tech we had to do to save that one extra tick over the previous record that was held there. We also have a Zora world record, which is a pretty big one we said like a year ago, and we beat it again like a month ago or so. So that was definitely a lot of work went into that. And then, we recently beat the Grossest Guardians world record, which was held for I think 2 years. Like it was
Wow.
um GE challenge. Oh no, sorry, Alex. Uh, Alex set that record like 2 or 3 years ago. Back when we had Armadillo, no ZCB, no Thralls, and I think they spent like 150 hours on that the time they had. And yeah, it took me 90 hours to beat it with all this like new gear, but we obviously it was a very very good time we set. So and yeah, it's I might be missing. I mean, there's some minor ones I held. Like we held the uh trio hard mode top overall record at one point, just from like a practice session we did, and it got beamed the next day by Alex's team because they it wasn't a very competitive record. It's just we happened to set it by accident, and then but yeah, so I think that's most of the actual competitive records I've held.
So basically half the bosses and content in the game, it sounds like. I mean, that is a very impressive resume.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of these times, I know that they take a tremendous time investment to be able to actually acquire some of these world records. Are those times so difficult to achieve because there's a big community around boss speedrunning, or is there another reason why some of these boss times are so optimized?
Big reason is like if I go for example, I mean there's some bosses like Chambers, but just it takes a long time to get the record because you have to get a world record scout, you have to keep going and going and going to get the RNG. But then you have something like Grotesque Guardians. It's a boss, it's a short, quick boss where you can really do the most optimized method, and it's just to get the fastest time. It's just a matter of insane RNG on top of also having the best method. Um, and all these bosses aren't quite there's only so many people going for these records as well because nobody wants to spend 100 hours grinding a boss while not killing it at all. Because funny enough, I probably could have gotten the Grossest Guardian's pet at least once if I had actually killed it. It was 90 hours, but yeah, so it's just a matter of you have to just reset for that RNG. I mean, some records like you look at Inferno, that is more of like a skill curve. Like there's RNG to it, but Inferno is actually a huge skill curve to get the record. Like only a couple of people are capable of even getting the record. So there's definitely some records are more just a skill curve, and others are more of like the RNG curve, I would say.
Do you kind of lean towards one side of those more heavily than the other? Like, do you like pursuing the records that have an RNG element, or do you kind of fall to the other side where you really like the skill-based challenges?
I do like both, but I will say Inferno's kind of been a bit. It's definitely I think the only record that's got such a high skill curve that I just need to invest the hours to get there. But all of the other ones, like Chambers, Gross Guardians, they do have a skill aspect, a fairly decent skill. Like, I even while going for a record for like 90 hours, I occasionally mess up on a run because it's quite precise all the things you have to do for some of these records. Whereas something like Zora I found was much actually kind of easier than Gross Guardians. Funny enough, because it was like it's a 30-second kill. There's not much you need to worry about. Not much changing mid kill. But I definitely enjoy both. But there's something like addicting about resetting for like 90 hours straight. Like this could be the one where we just hit insane and we get the time. So yeah, I like them both. But the RNG one's definitely addicting to grind out.
Just to give people a sense of kind of the time investment needed for some of these challenges, maybe we can take the Inferno, for example. Like, for me, just to learn the Inferno and get my very first Infernal Cape, it took over 200 hours. And I don't know where that falls compared to most people. I'm definitely like barely capable of completing the Inferno, and I'm sure a lot of people learn it faster than myself. But I have to imagine, like, are we talking thousands of hours of investment just for Inferno, for example, to get to that top level?
I mean, it's quite a lot. Like, I mean, for reference, my PB at the moment's about like a 51. I mean, it's outdated. It's before Missouri TOA came out. But I have like 54 Inferno capes. I've done a ton of Inferno on leagues as well. Like, it's cool. Like, you got, even with like this much Inferno done, like this is my PB. Like, it's a lot of time you have to invest. Like, on the order of like hundreds of Zucks. So yeah, definitely like just an insane amount of practice to get to the current like because that's the thing. A lot of people do love to speedrun Inferno. It's one of the only like high level pieces of content we have like when there's kind of like a drought of updates, and it's just there's only so many people. Like there's still only a handful of people that can go for like sub 45. There's only like a few people, or like I don't know how many people there are now, but it's just crazy the skill curve. So it's a lot of time, and even with time, if you're just clicks and you can just kind of just struggle to get to that level of just like because you need really good clicks, really good consistency. So even if you invest the time, you might not even get to that point. Like it's a really difficult record to go for.
Do you consider it the most difficult content in the game from a speedrunning perspective, or is there something that tops even the Inferno?
I would say Inferno because yeah, going for to to go for like the current record, which I think is like it's either 43 or 42 XX at the moment. It's gotten pretty crazy to the point you're using thralls. You don't even have ancients with you anymore. You're doing like all this crazy stuff, and like you have to be good with like instantly solving any wave. And there's so many different waves. You have to have Inferno enough that pretty much any wave you see, you instantly know the solution to avoid losing ticks and taking damage and just solve a wave. And there's so many possible waves to get, so it's just such a high skill curve. And on top of that, just the clicks of like moving, flicking, like doing all these things without losing ticks. It's just even if you memorize all the stuff, you still have that to do, which is just quite difficult. So yeah,
You mentioned the record is like a 43XX. If I'm not mistaken, one of the Grandmaster tasks is to finish the Inferno. Is it in less than 45 minutes, or am I mistaken?
it's in less than 65 minutes.
Okay.
So
I was going to
it's
say, if the world record is only 2 minutes less than that task,
yeah,
then I'm never getting my Zuck home. That is
yeah,
crazy. Okay. So it's a pretty good buffer between the
yeah,
world record. Okay.
yeah.
A follow up, how do you actually know when you've set a world record? Like, is there a leaderboard for boss speedruns that people can check out if they wanted to?
Yeah, there's a Discord, but it does keep track of it. It's the speedrun Discord. So pretty much that's probably the main place where we're tracked. There's also another website that I know a couple of people keep up. It's called like Temple or something.
Hmm.
But the I'd say overall the speedrun Discord does keep most of the records on track. People usually when we set a record will submit to there. But it would be nice if Jagex ever gave us like an in-game sort of thing. But until then, that's probably the best place to check. Because I mean, if you spend the time to get a record, you're probably going to submit it there.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. I was gonna ask you, like, I feel like some of these achievements are so incredible, but they end up flying under the radar. What would you think about Jagex adding like a leaderboard somewhere in game that shows the global best time for every boss, and then maybe the player's name that achieved it next to it, something like that?
I thought that'd be really cool because then it'd be like, I mean, you do kind of have a leaderboard for solo CM board where like, there's a weekly board where it shows the names of the top people in that world. So they have, I guess, the technology to show a player, but yeah, it's just be really cool to know, like, you got the record, everyone can see your name is there. Kind of like when you did the leagues first, if anyone did leagues first, your name was there. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention it was a league first for Inferno and Trailblazers.
Nice.
Um, yeah, but yeah, it'd be really cool. It also like I think a high scores would be cool because people compete for like XP and stuff like that in Boss KC, but having like a speedrun time high score, you could be like top 1,000, top 100. I feel like it would give a
Mm.
lot of motivation for players to kind of like speedrun beyond just like get your combat achievement or get whatever. So I think that'd be really cool as well.
I would like for them to add something like that because I feel like that's such a cool element of the game that doesn't get a ton of attention right now. And I know they have at least done things like with TOA and TOB, you can see the global best times, but I don't think you can see player or team names next to those metrics. So all you get is the time. Like you're not, those people aren't getting credit basically. Where I feel like if you are investing hundreds of hours into trying to get a record, you should at least get your name up on the board, you know?
Yeah, it's such a shame because you set the time and I mean I guess you can flex by doing exclamation mark PV, but you know people see the time on the board, they have no idea who's done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the community that's been built around speedrunning in old school, how would you describe the environment? Is it a very competitive community or is it really collaborative where people are trying to formulate new strategies together?
I would say it definitely varies. Like there's definitely certain depending on like the content where people are a bit more secretive with their strats. But even that can kind of vary from person to person. Some people share their strats. Some people kind of might hide certain strats. Like I know uh TOV had a lot of like people trying to hide secret strats for a long time, like with the p-necking bloat and like little optimizations p-necking bloat and like all these there's like little minor things people are kind of hiding to be able to get the fastest time over other people. But not everyone. Some people were secretive, some people shared. But I think overall, there's a lot of collaboration and like, I mean, still competitiveness. Like there's a lot of people who really go hard to get those records and do what they can. But yeah, I think a lot of people want to see the fastest time, and a lot of people kind of like help each other out because like I know a lot of other speedrunners that like Rasta and Spork and I don't know, I feel like people always wanna help others get better at the game, but yeah, like I said, there's like, some content, some bit where people are a bit more secretive over strats, so depends.
Are you familiar with speed running in other video games at all?
I am. I do enjoy watching some Super Mario 64 speedruns. Yeah,
Me too. Yeah, shout out
yeah.
to Cheese, Punke, and
Oh, yeah.
Simply.
Mhm.
Actually was watching them do their live speedrun event right before our interview
Oh,
now.
nice.
Anyway, the reason I ask is because there's really not a secret element to speedrunning other video games, and the reason for that is because most of these games are hosted on websites like Speedruns Live or Speed Demos Archive, whatever the website is, where you have to actually submit a video of you achieving that world record. It has to be scrutinized by moderators and reviewed very closely. And you can have a new tech and get a world record out of that, but kind of once that video is submitted, it's just out there in the world. Old school, it doesn't sound like there's any criteria to have to submit videos necessarily. Is that right?
Yeah, like on the speedrun Discord, you do submit evidence, but you don't necessarily need to submit evidence of like a video of the actual kill, because the game does log your time. You just have to prove that you have the time to the staff there. But yeah, so there's no like no need to. There's no requirement to submit actual full kills.
Okay, so yeah, new tech could definitely fly under the radar for a while then. Were there any like really juicy examples you can think of where someone had a super low profile strategy that kind of flew under the radar for an extended period of time and people were shocked when it finally surfaced?
Trying to think. 'Cause I know the current Vorcraft record, which was set a couple weeks ago, we don't actually know how Alex did it. We're pretty sure Alex has some secret tech because like I've done some simulations and then the time they have is absurdly rare. So, but I guess we haven't had yet the unveiling of the tech. I'm trying to think. There's definitely been some. I'm trying to. I mean, obviously, like I said, with TOB, there was like a lot of like the zero down bloating and like the little strats you could do to optimize it. It was kind of funny. I remember like back when me and Sido and smart people were kind of like doing some TOB speed runs. We had some people coaching us, and they kind of, while coaching us, did this like secretive sort of strat to make the p-necking below, like when you do a below p-necking to take less damage. But they didn't tell us about it. But when I VOD reviewed, I saw what they were doing, so we kind of figured out the little strat of like they kind of position us a certain way around the corner to take a lot less damage from a bloat. So that's I guess the closest example I can think of. And we, I don't know, nothing comes to. I'd have to think for a second to remember some examples. I think.
Yeah, no, so okay, let me throw a couple out at you. So you invented Kirby Skip, which
Oh yeah,
I guess first of all, could you like briefly explain what that is for someone who might not know?
sure. So the Kirby skip is a skip you do in solo chambers in the challenge mode. Essentially, when you get to a rope room, normally you'd have to either kill them, the rope NPCs, or maybe kill half of them and then cross. To kill all of them alive would be almost certain death because they hit so high. Um, the rope skip basically allows you to cross on like 1 to 3 HP, and you use like a combination of like redemption, rapid heal to recover HP mid cross, a Phoenix necklace, and a purple sweet ticky. Like just a whole bunch of actions really quickly as you cross the rope and turn back, and you basically survive with like a nearly 100% chance, and skip having to kill them. So you save a whole bunch of time and supplies, and that's what it is basically.
And you invented that. So did you reveal that right away, or did you sit on it for a while to try to get a Chambers record with it?
So interestingly, I actually discovered it on stream. Funny enough, like I was, because I saw initially the original Kirby skip was a little different. It involved like a special stall, and I saw like a clip of Port Hazard where he like used the stall to cross the rope, and he ate like lobster and trout, like all these different kinds of food to stay alive for like a long time, and then pick up the crystal and go back. I was like, that's cool. Can I turn this into something like? I wonder if it's possible to do this, but only use up like one item or something, and like actually make it worthwhile. And I spent like 2 hours of chat just theory crafting, trying to try and random stuff. Like at this point in time, like my knowledge of stalls and like Phoenix necklace and like different stuff wasn't as good as it is now. But we just tried to find a way to make it work. And after 2 hours of theory crafting, like I was actually close to giving up, but someone like found me another scout where I could get to a rope room, and then we finally figured it out, and we had it. And then I I actually tweeted like, right away. And funny enough, at first I was like, "Oh, this is a cool little thing," but didn't seem like people cared that much. And then a few months later, suddenly people are calling it the Kirby skip. I find out it's like a big thing. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's cool."
In
So yeah,
speedrunning, it's like a huge honor to have a skip or a trip trick named after you as well. So that is a very
yeah.
cool piece of history. The other really big tech that I can think of that was sort of revolutionary was going into the Verzik room with a very specific amount of spec regenerated and then using the prayer books to sort of manipulate the time at which your spec restored. Was that a secret tech, or was that also something that was kind of revealed right away?
I think it might have been a bit secret for a while. Like, I mean, I think people realized you could use the God books to lower your special attack and gain that 5% special because like you basically you gain special attack back right after you do your first special, so you kind of gain like the extra 5%. Um, but yeah, I think using it at Verzik, I think a lot of people didn't know for a while, and then I don't remember how people kind of start to find out, but it definitely was I think something that was a bit on the down low for a bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't remember exactly. I think it's just over time, it kind of people start to find out. Like, there's no like big reveal, but yeah, because I think it only is you do like in a certain team size. I think, or no, maybe I don't know exactly which team sizes, but yeah, it was more like a trickle down. I think people kind of found out over time or something.
I want to jump back to the bosses again. So I'm curious, which bosses are the most competitive from a speedrun perspective?
I say definitely Inferno is one of the most. just crazy how many people speedrun it. You know, there's no like monetary reward. Like you don't make GP doing it. It's purely to speedrun if you're doing the content. And that was definitely the amount of time and effort people spent improving and doing it. Probably the most competitive. I'd say Chambers is pretty competitive as well. You know, people because you can actually make money while doing Chambers. It's like it's efficient to speed run it while it's not like you have to reset like other bosses. But yeah, a lot of people love to push. Like I think the record for solo Chambers is like sub 13, like 12:30 or something crazy now. I don't even know. But yeah, people have really and like you can even see like the scout train business where people are selling world record scouts for like 3 mil. Someone's selling for like 10 mil. So you can see how competitive it is when people pay that much money just to get a world record scout. So Chambers is huge. CMs as well. CMs are nice 'cause you don't have to reset or you reset tech time, but you don't have to scout. But yeah, definitely at times gotten crazy as well. Beyond those ones, I mean, there's definitely some TOA speedrunning going on. I don't know if TOA is that competitive. I don't know. I mean, the solo times have been there's definitely a handful of people pushing the solo times and certain team times to really good times, but I don't, it's still kind of new content, so I don't know overall how competitive it is at the moment. As for various bosses, I mean, like Zora and stuff, like the smaller bosses. I mean, I have had a few people who tell me how like they're trying to also go for like the Zora record and like after seeing me do it. So there's definitely some interest, but overall, it's like to get a Zora task, that's gotta be like one of the least competitive records because the Zora task is so rare. Most people probably have never even had one. So and it's kind of like a requirement to even go for a record. Um, but some other bosses, I mean. Yeah, I mean, Grotesque Guardians, I don't think was ever. That's definitely one of the less competitive ones. It's just that, I mean, especially because Alex spent 150 hours to set this insane time, but stood for like 2 to 3 years, so it wasn't much room there. Other bosses, trying to think, because then it's mostly like Slayer bosses and what else is like a time? I guess Hydra. Yeah, Hydra is kind of RNG.
Hmm.
I mean, there's like a method, obviously, to optimize it. If you're not doing the method, you couldn't really beat the record. But funny enough, I think actually the Hydra record at one point it may have been beaten by RNG because I made that combat achievement for Hydra, and that method had potential to be record. I think at one point someone had the record for a while because just so many people are doing the boss. It kind of like crowdsourced beating the record. I think that happened
Hmm.
at some point, but I mean, now it's a new record set by Alex. Alex is saying all these records. Um, but yeah, so I'd say it's mostly like the raid stuff is most competitive for sure, and Inferno. And obviously there's some Barbarian Assault speedrunning, which that's probably pretty niche, I think. I think it's like, people make a lot of money doing boosting services there, so might as well get as fast as possible doing it. But yeah, that's all that comes to mind for the most part. And I guess there's like 6 Jads, 5 Jads, 3 Jads. I think the single JAD record may have been done with a bug that can't be done anymore potentially, so that one might not be possible. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was set with like some sort of weird bug. Um,
Like in the multi-jad challenge area, but the single jad challenge of
yeah,
that one? Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's some like unless it's been like beaten or reset or something. I think it's at least at some point it was set like a bug set like a really crazy time with some sort of weird special attack regen thing. I don't know. Um, but yeah, and then obviously there's also some non PVM like self-worker speed running, but there's constantly bugs happening. They kind of mess up the times, and people just get unbeatable times with bugs. So not the most competitive there, I guess, anymore.
That's got to
But
be a
yeah.
little bit frustrating when somebody, smashes a record with a bug. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel okay talking about this now because Jagex has patched it, but just a few weeks ago there was a bug in the sepulcher where you could run through a lot of the obstacles if you had only 1 HP. And there have been bugs previously that people used to like fake log and run through. But this was a new one where like people smashed the record by using this bug. Like what's kind of the reaction in the speedrunning community when it comes out that somebody quote unquote cheated to get a world record?
I mean, I guess if it's a more competitive one, it's definitely a big shame because now it's like all they can do is reset. I mean, I know for Sepulchre, they reset everybody's times, which kind of sucked because I had a pretty good time before, like 5:21 or something. And I got reset. So in cases like that, definitely it does suck. You spend all this time and it's kind of nulled. Uh, I guess I mean I know for a while, solo CMs had like an unbeatable time. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember. I think like early on, like when Teams first came out, I feel like there was some weird bug where they were able to bring a team into a solo scale.
Hmm.
I think this existed for a while, like at first, like early on in the release of CMs. So obviously that's kind of a shame because it's like, well, we can't beat it. Um, so yeah, definitely it's a pinks. You want to set the time, or like you worked hard to set the time, and now someone's done a bug that's obviously you don't want to abuse the same bug. Or maybe a bug is patched, so it's like kind of ruins it until JS patches it and then resets the times or something. So yeah, it's definitely a shame when it happens. It's just uh, yeah.
Bugs aside, are there any bosses or pieces of content that are so optimized that you don't think the records could be beaten with the current best in slot gear?
Um, I will say this, but his Spory record, it can be beaten by one tick, but the strategy for it's so horrible that I don't think it would take so many hours. I don't think I was gonna go for it because the problem is like it would be similar. Okay, the strat itself, I'm pretty sure might be a bit rarer than the current record, but you also have to you have to reset till how do I describe this? You have to make the PID of a world reset. Like, so PID for monsters goes from like 25,000 to like 65,000, and like whenever like new monsters spawn, like instance monsters and stuff like that. And once it spawns enough, it loops back. So there's a way to save a tick on Hespori by essentially getting overkill on the boss by having the Thrall hit the boss at the end, but the Thrall has to have PID over the boss. So there's like this weird thing you need to do where you get uh, you know you have to wait till the world gets to that point, which it used to be easier because it used to be from 25,000 to 32,000, so it wouldn't take that long, like maybe like 10 minutes for one world to reach the end. But now it's like they changed it like a month ago. It goes up to 65,000, so you have to find a world that's about to loop over, start the fight. So when the pit loops over, the pit loops back, and your flawless pit on the boss, like it cuts your resets per hour so low, and you're also doing a method that's rare than the old record. It would just no one's ever gonna beat that. I don't think, unless somebody has like 1,000 hours to spare. Someone I don't know. It would take so long with all the resetting.
I didn't even know that bosses had PID, to be honest with you. I thought
Yeah,
that was just a player thing. That's news to me.
yeah.
Huh.
Funny
So
and
yeah,
oh, sorry, I was
please
gonna
go
say.
ahead.
Funny enough, like the 7.2 second Hespori record I set was actually took advantage of the boss pit thing. So that's why I was actually really excited to make that video on YouTube. But I was a little burnt from leagues at the time and didn't get around to releasing it. But that was definitely probably one of the first times a boss world record took advantage of boss pid to save a tick to set an unbeatable record. So yeah, I had to just constantly reset and like wait like 10 minutes to do an attempt. So it was pretty brutal.
What is in I don't know if you can explain this in layman's terms or not because
Mhm.
it's clearly pretty complex, but what is the value of that tick that is being saved? Is it the difference between an extra hit or not, or is there something else?
So it basically has to do with overkill. So I should explain overkill first. Overkill is a mechanic where basically, normally when you kill a monster, it has a one tick delay before it begins the death animation. So that's one tick longer you're waiting for the boss timer to end. But if you get overkill, and how you get overkill is basically if a monster reaches 0 HP, but there's still damage that hasn't been like applied to it yet. So, for example, like if you attack the boss and then your thrall attacks after you, and you kill it, and then the thrall's attack is still on the way to hit it, that's overkill damage. Or even if you swing a scythe and one of the first two hit splats kills it, then the last hit splat will be overkill, and that causes the monster to start for death animation one tick sooner, which saves you a tick. But problem is, if you're finishing off the monster with your thrall is pit over you. So if it were to attack the same time as you, it would hit the boss before you can. Like it wouldn't work. You wouldn't get overkill. So thrall has to attack after you. So if you do a melee attack to finish off a boss, and the thrall attacks after you, well, the boss is already dead. The thrall can't attack. But if a thrall has pid, it can actually attack the same tick the boss dies and cause overkill. It's kind of weird. So that's why, like, if you're trying to finish off a boss with melee, you need to do a PID reset thing to get PID on your Pharrell so it can give you overkill. Which, yeah.
I'm smiling and nodding right now. I'm gonna have my camera blinked when I post this, but yes, I'm smiling and nodding, and I understood almost zero of that. But
Oh no.
hey, that is incredibly like niche just to save a tick. And for a few of these records that we've touched on, you've spoken about the significance and the value of using thralls in these records. Exactly how big was it when thralls were released for boss speedrunning?
It's pretty huge. Like even ignoring the overkill aspect, which is definitely a big aspect, especially for the Inferno, it's definitely helps a lot there as well. But the DPS they add at certain bosses really does add up. Like, for instance, if you look at my Grotesque Guardian world record, like I did a bunch of simulations just to see like what my chances are of getting a certain time with a certain number of hits, etc. And there's points where just adding 3 damage to the kill, like oh yeah, I'll do like an extra brawl hit here, that boosts the success rate significantly. And that's just like a single brawl hit. Like when you go to these really optimized records, every little bit of damage can make a huge difference. Especially like, the Zorte record I set like a year ago, which was the I think 2880 that I set like a year ago. I think Scotty's world record, he spent like a crazy long time to get the time he had. It was like a 30.6 or something. And he did his before Thralls, and just having Thralls made the time I was going for like I think the estimated time to get was like crazy low, like 5 hours or 10 hours. Like it was like so much less than what he spent. Like Thralls alone just makes such a huge difference DPS wise. And then just then you also have like the overkill to get like you save a tick for free with overkill as well, which is just huge. So just DPS and overkill wise, there's just huge for optimizing and shaving a couple seconds off of these various bosses.
And did that basically affect almost all speedrun content across the board when Thralls
Y-
came out?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere you can use Thralls, like to a point where, even in the Inferno, people, it took a while, but once people became good enough, they started bringing Thralls into the Inferno instead of Ancients. So they don't really have any healing other than like their blowpipe spec. That's how crazy the Thrall difference is. The people will go that far to use them. So it's pretty huge.
I can't imagine
Mm.
doing the Inferno without Ancients. Like
Yeah.
that alone sounds ridiculous to me. I guess thralls are a great example, but how often do you see other new strategies come about that allow for new world records without needing new best in slot gear upgrades?
Um, they do come about every once in a while. Like sometimes there's like somebody missed something you can do on a certain boss. I'm trying to think of a recent example if I can, because obviously, let me think. There's definitely been some, like obviously, you had the TLB where people were simply just using Phoenix on bloat, and just as simple as your positioning with one person behind bloat instead of in front, and like going around the corner, like this little positioning thing making a huge difference. Um, there's definitely been. Trying to think. I guess even if I go to Grotesque Guardians, like just when I was optimizing the world record for Grotesque Guardians, like the method I started with was very different from what I ended with. Like just little things like whether like I spec at the start or hold spec, and like spec later so I can camp a certain ring. Just little changes like that making a big difference.
It sounds like once in a while it happens. It's not that speedruns get so optimized that new gear is the only way to improve the times.
Yeah, there's definitely, especially if you look at something like TOA, we just the game better at the monkey room and like the little strats you can do with like um all the different bosses to optimize your DPS, and like where do you use your adrenaline, where do you use like your different potions, which of the current spec weapons do you use, like claws versus DCB. Definitely some of the content has like a lot of different variations, and to just find the optimal thing, like what is like actually the best for getting the record, because look at how far the expert solo time for TOA has improved so much that I mean I'd have to watch. I haven't really done too much speedrunning of TOA yet, but um, to watch it, like they must be doing some crazy like optimizations over what I do for like I just do a casual 410, decently fast 410s, but like, I'm not going for like world records or anything. And yeah, I'm sure
Casual
whatever.
410s, he
Yeah,
says. Come
yeah.
on.
But yeah, like, I'm sure like they're doing some. 'Cause I know at one point, No Monkey set like a record like a month ago, and he literally brought no food into a 300. It was just like it was some absurd, like at the time, absurd inventory. But now I'm sure it's even more crazy. So it's just people just push it further and further, just optimizing it with what they have, without even changing the gear, just going harder and like with the strats, like venging the Kefri balls and like stuff you wouldn't think of as being viable, but you can do it.
Would you say it's a good thing or a bad thing that a lot of records tend to fall when new best in slot gear upgrades come out? Like we touched on Mario 64 speedrunning briefly earlier. Those records Other than the very, very rare new tech that it comes out, like the game itself stays the same, right? But old school is constantly evolving. We're consistently getting new range upgrades, melee upgrades. Is that looked on positively, or is that kind of a drag for speedrunners?
I think, I mean, if there's like a big update coming out soon that we know of, I do think a lot of people might put off going for a record. Like I know I did kind of want to get the sub 30 solo CM before TOA came out, just because it was like a personal goal I set. But to go for a world record when you know it's gonna be broken in a month, you probably won't really go for it. But at the same time, I feel like, we've gotten these new items, but the Staff of Tumikin in particular, like it changes how you do solo CM so much, but I feel like it breathes almost a new life into CM speedrunning. So I think like like you have to learn the new staff method for Olm. Mage gear is like critical to bring into the third floor now. Like so much changes about your strats now that it's actually kind of like fun and interesting. I feel like I think it'll kind of grow stale if you just never allow for any upgrades because you don't want records BBN for free. But I just feel like there's so much like interesting new stuff and new strats come out of it that it's kind of like it's fun. Like like speedrunners tend to enjoy it because I know a lot of people like once TOA came out and they had their fun with that have been like moving on to CMs and like taking advantage of a staff, saying insane times. Like I think 27xx is a record now or something. I'm not even sure, or maybe no sub 27. It's sub 27 now. I'm pretty sure. Like people are having like a lot of fun setting the new records. So I think overall it's like uh, people are kind of okay with it, and I feel like that's the way to be. Like it's so much fun, and all the new stuff you can do, all the new tech, and see who can break the new barrier. Like instead of sub 30 now sub 27 first and such. I feel like it's a lot of fun, and I think it's good.
I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here for a
Mm.
second. Do you happen to know what the longest current standing world record is across all of the different bosses and raids in the game?
Let me think. I mean, the Grossest Guardians one that I beat was standing for like almost 3 years. That was definitely a long one. I'm trying to think because obviously raids tend to be being pretty often. I mean, I don't remember when Fasani came out, but Fasani's been like obviously, once after my record got beaten by Vodka for 606, it's been standing since then. So that's only a few bumps after Fasani came out. So if you know what year that is, I'm not sure. But Fasani and Gorgeous Guardians definitely two of the longest. Inferno just keeps getting beaten. People keep getting better and better and bringing crazier and crazier switches, like three-way melee switches for all like just absurd stuff. So Inferno just keeps getting beaten. Same for Chambers and TOB, like the times just keep getting beaten, so they're too competitive and too people keep trying. But yeah, I'd say it's probably either Fasani or Gross's Guardians before I beat it.
Is
Um,
the reason for that because those two encounters have extra elements of RNG, or do people just not like that content?
in the case of Fasani, the record that was set was just like obviously Vodka played very well. I don't think there's a video of it, unfortunately, but it's just like on top of playing really, pretty much not making mistakes. It's just the RNG set was insane. Like I set the 625 or 624 time, and I was like, that is so good. That's probably not going to be in for a while. And then he beats it by almost 20 seconds. Like the time he set is just so absurdly fast that no one even considered the idea of beating it, or if they did, they tried and couldn't because it was literally they got the insane RNG so early into Fasani's history, and it went unbeaten. And then in the case of Gross's Guardians, it's just Alex theorycrafted this really good method, spent 150 hours grinding it out. It's just no, there's nobody who wants to spend more than that. So it's just until now. I mean, even for me, it took me 90 hours to beat it with a new gear. So it was these two records just really, really difficult to beat RNG wise, so they stood for so long. I mean, Fasani's still unbeaten, but I think now for Tumikin it might get beaten, but Tumikin actually isn't an increase in DPS, but it does allow you to bring Thralls and Depth Charge, which is an increase. So it kind of ends up working out that it does. Because there's actually a strat of you would spellbox swap like 5 times in one day, in one attempt with your magic cape, so you can like do Thralls and then switch to your Fire Surge. But now you can use the Tumikin, which is about the same DPS on pillars as the Fire Surge. So I can see Poseidon's maybe getting beaten at some point, but it's still such an insane time that it might take a while. But
Ha-
definitely one of those two.
Having to do spellbook swaps would be really rough from a speedrun perspective too, because you'd basically get like a handful of attempts at best per day, right?
Yeah, like that's a big problem with it. Like you could reset till the first phase is insanely fast, and then hope for other four phases are quick. But it just yeah, one attempt a day is not going to work.
I know that PVM content varies very heavily in its design and mechanics, which results in a lot of PVMers who are kind of super experts in a handful of encounters. But is there anyone in the speedrun community as a whole that's kind of considered to be the best PVM speedrunner in the game?
Like just best in general.
Yeah.
Uh, Hard to say because I mean, yeah, most people tend to. There's not like one person that's like the best in everything. You know, you have Rasta's like insanely good at solo CM and Inferno. You have someone like Alex who goes for a lot of niche records like Zora, Gorgeous Guardians, Hydra. But I don't think I've ever seen Alex do much with like raids, speedrunning. Actually, no, Alex has done TOB speedrunning, but I haven't seen much Chambers or TO or Chambers or Inferno speedrunning from him. Um, yeah, I mean, to cover every piece of content, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like it's such a time investment to get competitive time in every single boss. I think I'm
Uh,
sure
You've got to
if
be in
Rasta,
the conversation too, right? Because you've
yeah,
covered a lot of different bosses.
yeah, like I've been pretty competitive in most, I guess. A lot of the niche bosses. Uh, I held the raids one record for a while, like years ago. TOB, I mean, I said an uncompetitive, overall hard mode TOB 3-man record. It was a very specific record. It was just in practice. It wasn't like a crazy time. But I've never like grinded out any of like competitive, like, 5-man or like 5-man. Because people usually care more about the regular time than the overall time, kind of. And like 5-man's like the big one people like to get the fast times in. I definitely do have a very, very wide range, I guess. So I'd be up there, I guess. But I'm definitely slacking on Inferno. That's the one thing. I've been meaning to really improve on that. That's my one weak spot where I don't even have like a sub 50 yet, which is kind of like compared to all the other content I do, I'm really, really slacking there. But yeah, if it wasn't for Inferno, I'd be a bit more running because that one just. But I really want to get into that soon and get maybe a sub 45. Just, the problem is it's a long grind. I keep like, oh shit, now I have this content I want to do. I want to go do this content, and you have to just do so much Inferno. And if you take a break, you get rusty. So, but yeah,
Well, if you need any tips, I have a 10-hour Inferno cape, so I'm happy to give you some pointers.
10 hours of tips, nice.
Switching gears here, Jagex released Speedrun Worlds just a few weeks ago. Would you like to see them add some support for boss speedrunning in those too?
Like a boss speedrun world where you can have like kind of like a tourney world, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, that could be interesting. I guess it's tricky because at the moment you can kind of speedrun like all the bosses already. Other than okay, Inferno, you need an Inferno task, and Zoro, you need a Zoro task. But other than those two, you can pretty much speedrun any boss relatively easily. So hard to say. I feel like I don't know. I feel like the way it is now isn't too bad. It could be kind of like is compared to like quest speedrunning where you need to have like it doesn't really work in the main game and other stuff. I mean, it could be interesting, I guess. Like everyone can go for like a really fast time, but there's already combat achievements kind of like encourage you to speedrun in the main game, like with your own stats, own character. So and I guess you get a weird situation of people could just make a bunch of alts and set like the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, set all the records of 10 different alts. So, like if you have a world record holder and they can do it, just make 10 alts all level 3 with a bond. And then so, I mean, but it could be interesting for sure. But it would give, I guess it could be used for people just to practice bosses they can't normally get to. But I guess overall, I feel like it's not really needed too much. Once again, it's really just Inferno and Zulrah that are kind of like a pain to get the task for.
One other aspect, I guess, that would kind of bring some change to is right now you kind of have to have best in slot gear if you want to be able to
Mm.
attempt some of these world records. So, do you think that it would open up the accessibility very much to get more people into speedrunning? Like, obviously, I think the best of the best speedrunners already have max gear in the game. but you might have more people be introduced to the concept of boss speedrunning if they had the ability to go onto a temporary world and select their loadouts, right?
Yeah, I guess if I think about it that way, because then it obviously even for me, like when TOA came out, I had to make some money to actually afford all the gear. Not everyone even has the. I didn't have enough to afford it right away. um, I guess I would definitely encourage a lot more people to go for it, but wouldn't necessarily go for it in the first place. People maybe like have the skills but just don't have a bank, or like maybe don't have the skills yet, but they see it's kind of fun. So I guess from that perspective, actually could be kind of good. Um, Fun to kind of try those different bosses, speedrunning them, see what as long as it's like kind of like well, I guess we already have tournament worlds, so people can kind of like try. I was gonna say maybe it would kind of ruin of like you get to try out all the best gear, so it's not as magical when you earn it for yourself. But we already have tournament worlds, so you can kind of already do that. So I guess that's not really an issue either. So I guess that, yeah, it could be interesting. Could potentially help some people see it's kind of fun, and there's definitely some records I think that could go down much lower if we had more people going for them. Whereas, at the moment, some bosses only so many people go for, like the more niche ones, like Slayer bosses and such. So yeah, I guess it actually could be interesting when you put it that way.
I know it's been raised to them as a suggestion from a few people. I think it would be fun. Like I don't really play my main a whole lot. But I definitely am not even close to being able to afford best in slot gear. So I would never be able to go for any of those records. Not that I have the skill level to anyway, but it's fun on paper, I think, to be able to just like log in, give it a few attempts, kind of see what your times look like, and then compare it to the world records and see how far off you actually are at that point. If I'm not mistaken, you've taken part in at least one of Eevescape and Hootie's speedrun cups, right?
Yeah, we were in both of them. Yeah.
Could you kind of explain to the audience how that event worked, just generally speaking?
Sure. So essentially, you get a whole bunch of teams that sign up for the Speedrun Cup tournament, and your team will basically compete to speedrun various bosses against another team. Like the first round, you have like this team versus this team, and it's like if you lose, you're out of the tournament, and then everyone so half the teams are moving up to the next one, and it's various bosses like Zulra. You have like raids, Chambers, TOB, Inferno, Fight Caves, even like all these different bosses, and you essentially you get like one attempt to actually do the boss. Like Eevescape or Hootie or someone's gonna watch you, and you send it. So you can practice all you want, but you get one attempt. So you kind of do like a mix of speed strats and safety strats, and yeah, so it's very interesting, and that's pretty much how it works.
Those were an absolute blast to watch. In fact, I think out of all the old school events, like official or community events, those were probably my favorite. Huge shout out to both Jake, Eevescape, and Hootie. I was a long time ago, I was trying to get Eevescape on the podcast to talk about some of his events, and it unfortunately fell through. Jake, if on the off chance that you're listening, if you ever want to talk, hit me up. But I'm curious, what was your experience like competing in those? Like you have a certain level of pressure that's not necessarily applied when you're just logging in for yourself during the day and trying to go for these records. What's it like sort of being on a stage and competing live?
It's definitely a bit different than a normal attempt for sure. Like I mean, it was technically pre-recorded, but it's like you get one attempt and Hootie is watching you. So it in a way it's like the same as being live. Like this is what your attempt and it's gonna be shown on stream. Like this is all you get. And it's definitely an added pressure you wouldn't normally have. Like especially something like Gauntlet where it's like, oh my it's so easy to die in Gauntlet. It's so easy. And it's like this is my attempt. I have to do good. I have to find the boss, find the supplies. It gets your heart beating more than a lot more than normal stuff, and you make mistakes you would normally make because it's like the pressure, and like you mix between playing it like whenever you're nervous and trying to kind of play it safe, you tend to kind of almost like play worse. Whereas like if you just go all out, just go fast, you almost kind of play better. It's weird, if you know what I mean, um, but it's definitely like a lot of fun, and like it's a shame when your run doesn't go as intended. But when you have like a really good run, it's really Like it feels you feel like pretty hype. Like during the second speedrun cup, we actually okay once again it's not the most I actually forgot about this. It's not the most competitive time, but we set was most likely world record for trio normal nightmare. I think like nobody has ever tracked their time, but like the time we set was so fast that we're pretty sure no one's ever beaten this time. Like it was like like the strats we're doing combined of how lucky it was because we did so many runs of this. And why would anybody be speedrunning trio nightmare? There's no reason. Um, and the time we set was just it's so insanely fast that it was like there's no way. So and like the feeling when like we had this one attempt and we set the record, it's like what? It definitely feels pretty crazy.
There's something really special about those events. I'm sure like you're talking about there's a lot of nerves involved, but there's also kind of like the adrenaline that you get that almost enhances your gameplay sometimes. Obviously people respond differently. But events like that, Speedrun Cup in particular, Jagex hasn't provided a ton of support for those events historically from a community perspective. And going forward, would you like to see more events like the Speedrun Cup? And how ideally do you think that those should be run?
I think it'd be really cool to see more of them. There's definitely a positive response from people watching, and I think EV's community were really trying to get like Jai support like their own servers or something they could do because that would make it a lot easier because we can't really run it live because a lot of these things are like I know some things require cape swaps, some things require like there's so many different things that we kind of have to be pre-recorded, which is also like quite a hassle for them because like Hootie was like watching all the runs for the Speedrun Cup 2. So all these different teams, he's up all hours of the night trying to watch our run to confirm confirm we're doing the run and seeing it. So it's like so we're not just like doing multiple attempts and saying like a fake recording. So it's putting like Hootie through hell throughout those weeks of just trying to always be there. So yeah, having like because if it was actually like properly live, that would be pretty crazy, I think. But would definitely only be possible if we had proper servers. Um, but yeah, I think it would really improve like the potential of what can be done, make it a lot easier to do, and it would just be a lot of fun. And I think seeing more speedrun events like that would be really, really huge and probably boost kind of like the speedrunning community a bit when there's more like I don't know if there's more events happening, more teams might start applying, more people might like get a chance to try it. Could be a lot of fun.
I wonder what it would be like if Jagex actually took I don't remember how many teams were competing. Let's say it's 10 teams and flew them out to Jagex headquarters and then did like a LAN competition. That seems like it could be a really cool live stream and a really cool event.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I know they did that a little bit with demo mode, like took like 10 people to demo mode. But that would be insane. Like seeing, because then you also have like all the live reactions, everybody there. Um, that would definitely be a crazy event if they ever did that.
Make it happen, Jagex. I know you're listening.
Surely.
Aside from speed running, just generally speaking, you're definitely in like the top 0.1% of PVMers. Not only have you completed the Grandmaster combat achievements and also claimed your Zuck helm, but you basically have guides for all of the significant combat tasks. Did you intend for the guides to mainly just serve as task examples, or do you think that someone who is an above average PVMer could realistically learn enough from your guides to be able to complete the Grandmaster tier?
I think for the most part, yeah, it's like all the stuff I have guides on. I think if your account is leveled, like obviously if you're 80 combat, probably not gonna be doing GMs, but if you're leveled up enough, have some decent gear, like you don't need Missouri and like all the best in slot, but definitely some decent stuff to work off of. I do think anyone can do it. Like if they watch the guide, learn from it. I haven't made an Inferno guide yet for like the sub 65, but I did intend to make one eventually, but kind of want to get myself 50 first so I can be more qualified to make, make it. And then I was like, oh well, I can't put that off. But yeah, like even the Inferno sub 65 is like it's really not as like I would say you still have to get your first Inferno case so you kind of get used to doing Inferno a bit faster. But it really is just kind of like having augury or no, rigor on the whole time when you're DPSing. And just never blood barrage a single enemy for a minute to heal because it wastes too much time. As long as you can do that, you'll probably get sub 65, like also be on task. You can blood barrage for clumps. You can drink brews. You can, as long as you're not just like standing around blood barraging a single enemy for a minute, and you're always DPSing with your rigor on, you can probably get sub 65. Like that's it. There's not nothing too fancy. Obviously, it takes practice to get to that point, but beyond, obviously, other than Inferno, though, like Grotesque Guardians, that it's actually I think kind of a fun method. Like it's not too bad to learn. Hydra is okay. That guy was kind of confusing, but you can kind of just RNG a record for that one, or not for record, but GM time. Um, uh, so some of the bosses are a bit more RNG, but I definitely think like if you follow along with these guides and your accounts, at the stage it needs to be to do them, I think anyone can do it if you just put your mind to it. I think people kind of like see how intimidating is like how it seems, and they kind of get put off attempting it. But I'm hoping with the changes we're making to combat achievements, both the point system, which is like the point system change, I think, is actually really huge because it's like, normally it's like, why would you even attempt GM if you think if you think you can't do all of GM? Like, let's say you're not comfortable with Inferno, so like, why even do GM? But if you can use the other GM tasks as points to complete Master and Elite and Hard, suddenly you have the reasoning to do as many GM tasks as you can, and then suddenly, oh, I have like all these GM tasks done. Maybe I can finish this. So I think that's gonna really push a lot of people to attempt it if they make that change, adding the point system. So I think that'll be huge.
Two questions for you about that. If I'm understanding correctly, I know that they're reworking it to a point system, but I admittedly haven't read a whole lot about the specifics of how it'll work. You can get points from like a task in the Grandmaster tier and then apply that as credit to tasks in lower tiers. Is that correct?
Yeah, like my understanding, it'll be kind of like once you get a certain number of points, you've unlocked easy, and once you've gotten a certain number of points, you've unlocked medium. So a GM task is going to give you a lot of points. So you can like really quickly probably complete easy, complete medium. So you can almost like do barely any of the tasks in easy and still complete it. But then, at the same time, I'm assuming you probably have to do everything to get the GM tier because there's nothing above GM tier to give you points. So to reach the point threshold for GM, I'm gonna assume is like everything. Otherwise, it'd be kind of weird. But yeah, so essentially you just get points from, and it just you need a certain amount of points to unlock it easy, and then some more points to unlock medium. Kind of like leagues when you get certain points to get to rank 2 and then rank 3. So that's my understanding of what it's gonna be like.
Okay, that makes sense. When I had initially heard about this, I assumed it was going to be like you have to complete 90% of the easy tier in order to be considered completing the easy tier, and then repeat that for all tiers except Grandmaster. But what you're saying actually seems like it would probably make more logical sense. And I would really hope that's actually how it works because I have a lot of Grandmaster tasks
Oh
completed,
yeah.
and I would like that credit for the lower tiers. Speaking about the combat tasks specifically, if you had to create a top 3 most difficult task list, what would that look like?
Top one definitely perfect TOB. That one, I mean, you have to find a team first of all, and then it's like you two people out of three will play perfectly, and one person makes a mistake, and then the next raid, those people play perfectly, but now you make a mistake, and the next raid, those two people play perfectly, but the other guy makes a mistake. Like it just, there's always that one person that makes one mistake when everyone else is perfect, and it's a nightmare trying to get everybody in sync for one whole raid. So easily the hardest, I would say. But beyond that, I mean, okay, in general, team combat can be a bit tricky if you don't know any good teammates, but if you do, the other ones aren't too bad. I think some of the speedrun ones are a bit tough, but I'm gonna say maybe Inferno stay above 50 HP or Inferno don't let the snake dig is definitely a top 3 as well. Because those ones are like of all the Inferno tasks, I think the trickiest because not letting the snake dig, you kind of have to run into the middle sometimes of it to stop it from digging. So it's puts you in danger a few times. And staying above 50 HP, obviously, you take a single major hit, it's over, or even like a single ranger hit if you're not full HP. So those two definitely deserve a top 3 slot. Definitely the toughest of the Inferno tasks, I would say. And yeah, I guess that'd be my list. Perfect top in those two. But obviously, if you don't really know anyone for team content, then maybe team content will be harder for you. So it just depends.
Are there any tasks that you feel are either too difficult or just bad tasks that you think Jagex should potentially rework?
I don't think anything's too difficult. Um, it's a little bit annoying in Perfect Top, but with Zarpus, you can get kind of RNG'd with like blocking all the exhumed. there might be a pattern of movement you can do. I feel like there's certain situations where you can kind of like not cover them all potentially. But other than that, bad tasks. Let me think. I mean, okay, they fixed the KC task. That was like kind of like a pain having to get like up thousands of hours of KC. Well, not thousands, but like so much KC. Um, I'm trying to think. I feel like there was something annoying, but I can't remember. I'm sure if at the time, I'm sure it was something that I was doing on stream that was like super annoying to complete. But I feel like most of like nothing feels like it's overly difficult. And as far as just being annoying, I feel like most of it's fine at this point. I feel like there's one task that was super annoying. I just can't remember it though.
Well, that's pretty good if Jagex has struck a balance for basically everything where you feel like it's in a realistic spot for people to be able to achieve. And TOA came out fairly recently at the time of recording this. Before we get into the upcoming combat tasks for that, what do you think of TOA and its invocation system?
I'm a big fan of it. I do like how people can kind of like get into TOA, and you can kind of customize your raids a bit. Like some people are better at certain things, so they'll turn on different invocations, and like they can kind of like push yourself, like make the raid as hard as you want it to be, versus rather than just like really quickly doing an easy speed run of like just a really easy raid just over and over and over. Kind of like what TOB turns into after a while. Like once you know what you're doing, it's just going with a team, going as fast as you can. You're just kind of like breezing through the content. You barely like in terms of normal TOB, like you barely even feel the purple phase of Verzik. Like tornado, like it's dead so fast, you barely even have to dodge tornadoes. But in the case of TOA, like I like that you actually can push yourself and you're rewarded and encouraged for doing it. Like it's a lot more efficient to go as high as you can. And yeah, it's nice that it's accessible for people. I know, like I think a lot of other MMOs are kind of like this, where there's like a raid and you have like the normal mode, and like the mythic or something or whatever, like different tiers, and you can kind of as you get better move up. So I think it's kind of nice to let people kind of get into the content. Obviously, there's the question of like if it's so accessible, the items are kind of like coming to the game faster, becoming cheaper. So it's kind of a hard balance to strike, I guess, of like, do you want to purposely restrict players from a content just so items are worth less, or do you make the items rarer? Then that's kind of annoying to, I guess, for Iron Man to get all the items. So it's a hard balance to achieve for sure. They could have maybe just at least a bit made the scaling a bit higher of like the lower tier stuff being a bit rarer and the higher tier stuff being a bit higher. Maybe, but I don't know. It's hard to say the exact balance on like still being rewarding because you have people who do TOA and see no drops for so long that do we even want to make it rare? I don't know. But I guess that's incentive to push up. Don't do 150s, go up to 250, 300, 350. But yeah, it's hard to strike that exact balance between reward and effort while still encouraging people to actually try the content instead of just going in and again like nothing. But yeah, but I don't know, big fan of the invocation system overall.
While we're recording this, TOA does not currently have combat achievements, but Jagex is going to be adding them, it sounds like, within the next couple of months. Obviously, there will be tasks for each of the different tiers, but for the higher tiers, where do you think the expert tiers will lie in difficulty compared to chambers and top tasks?
The expert tiers.
So we're
Oh, you mean like
talking
a
master and grandmaster tiers.
okay? Because I wasn't sure if you meant because I know of a combat achievement list because they list it before like it's out and it was like entry mode, normal mode, and expert mode. So I wasn't sure if you meant like the expert mode achievements.
Right.
But but yeah, so yeah, master and grandmaster. I personally could see them being a bit harder because it's like I guess if I compare doing like a 500 scale raid, I mean, okay, as long as we're excluding perfect TOB because perfect TOB is so hard. But yeah, like a 500 scale raid is all to get the phalanx kit is definitely quite difficult. It did become much easier after some of the updates, obviously, because when it first came out, it was incredibly difficult. You were pretty much forced to have quiet pairs on, which is insanely difficult. But yeah, because we already have rewards based on doing like a 500 scale raid, and like how difficult that is compared to chambers and Tob. I can see like the potential GM task being a step above the task we have at the moment for chambers and Tob. Um, I don't know if it will do any. I mean, I guess we have to still see. Like, I don't know if 500 combat sheet. Like, 500 invocation will be like just for the kit, and maybe all the combat achievements for TOA will be below 500, or maybe they will have a combat achievement like do a 500 or do like a 540. I don't know how hard we're gonna go, because there is definitely the potential to make it incredibly difficult, like much tougher than anything we have. Like if you do like I don't know, do a 500 and have like Kefri as the final boss of Aerial Assault, which would be a pain. Like when the main boss shows up. So there's definitely a potential to make an insanely difficult raid. That's the thing. But I think we're gonna be just a bit above overall the stuff from Chambers and TOB, aside from Perfect Top, because Perfect Top just getting a team to be perfect is so insanely hard. But yeah, that's kind of why I see a line just a bit above. But I guess we'll see. Depends how hard they really want to make it.
Is it fair to assume that you're going to be going for all of the TOA tasks that come out?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And if you,
Probably, I
yeah, please go ahead.
was gonna say probably like as soon as it comes out, gonna see how quick I can get them done.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask that. So I was like, obviously, we don't know what the tasks are yet, but if you had to make a guess, how long do you expect it to take to complete all of the tasks?
If I can get like a good, like assuming there's probably gonna be some team only challenges, if I can get a good team, I feel like you know, the top gamers could maybe do it in like the first day. But if there's something as difficult as like perfect top, where it's like, oh man, we're gonna spend like 6 hours trying to get like this perfect run in. Obviously, it could take multiple days. Um, because I think the people who are like the top level at doing TOA probably can do most of the achievements relatively fast. It's just, stuff like, oh, perfect TOA in like a team in like a 450 or something crazy. I don't know. I don't know how hard we're gonna go. They could be like do a perfect 300 only. But if there are achievements like that, that require team coordination, I could see that being a while. But if it's solo content, I feel like most solo challenges, um, like unless we make it insanely difficult, I think most challenges can be done in a single day by like anyone who's done like a five. Well, I guess any of like the really top rated, top level TLA gamers that can even do like 575s and such. Once you've done like a 575, you're probably pretty comfy to do just about anything Jagex will throw at you, other than team content. Obviously, it's in because you look at we did a high risk TOA where the Hemis runs. We did that like a few days ago, and it was basically a 370 scale raid where we're all trying to PK each other. And Akka with double trouble on was just people dying quickly. So definitely saw how like even at 370 team raids can go pretty crazy, and that's so yeah. But I see most of them being done within the first day. But if there's some annoying ones, it could take a few days to get maybe some of the tricky stuff done. That's my guess.
I'm really excited to watch your stream and watch you do
Yeah,
attempts when those are released. That's going to be great.
yeah.
If Jagex came to you and they said, Kirby, we need you to design raids 4. With all that you know about Chambers and Tob and TOA now, what elements do you take from each of the existing raids and what new elements might you bring to a brand new raid?
I definitely would try to bring in some more movement-based elements, like stuff like statistic maze and stuff like that. I feel like something like that, but even more intense of like the sort of really, really good pathing and quick pathing. Like, I forget. I have like the funny idea of like imagine like a statistic floor, but it's like, well, I don't. It might be too hard to make it tick perfect, but imagine it's like you have to um, go across the tiles and like um, it's like every tile, like it's like a path you have to travel, and every time you travel across a set of tiles, they turn off. But some tiles be colored differently. You have to cross over them multiple times, like on a weird like crazy pathing stuff. I don't know. I feel like pathing is one of the interesting things about the game that's kind of unique to old school. It's like tick based. You click and you go, and especially with stuff like Sepulchre and such. I feel like more pathing based stuff that being able to uh, click and move precisely, similar to like Wook's walking and like all this other like. I feel like there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with pathing. So I try to do a lot with that. I think, and definitely I'm a big fan of some of like even like the skulls in TOA was really cool. Like you go bam 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 bam. Definitely some sort of once again pathing is just so cool and old school. The things you can do with it. So definitely something along those lines. And in fact, I want to think about like a lot. There's a lot in just a warden fight. There's a lot of moving around, avoiding stuff. But yeah, so other than pathing, um, definitely some prayer stuff. I don't want to get too deep into prayer. I don't think we should ever get too deep into prayer flicking. Like maybe a little bit of like um, a Jad like boss. We have to like pray against it really quickly or something. But I don't want to, I think when you go too hard on like prayer flicking, it can make content be kind of annoying. Like especially if you're trying to one tick flick and sort of prayer through a whole thing or something. But I think something where like you see the boss do some sort of pattern, you have to like be like, oh, mage range, mage melee or something. Something where it's like tense and like I don't uh just get that feeling of like it's like really tense and you could mess up and it's over, just something like that. But beyond movement and prayer, once again, limited prayer, not too much on prayer picking.
What
I mean, like
about
obviously,
elements that are like already in different raids that you think are really good and you'd like to see carried forward?
huh? There's definitely a lot. Like, I do like the obviously, I think it's cool how Olm has all these different methods of like different sorts of patterns you do with pathing, and obviously with Verzik having to time when the boss attacks to not be in melee distance, like different things where you have to like know the cycle of a boss, know the cycle of your weapon, and also like the boss chases you around and you're trying to move the boss a certain way, so you can do stuff like pog tanking and such, like cool things you can do if you kind of really know what you're doing with like the pathing and the movement of a boss. Big fan of those. I'm trying to think what else did TOA do? TOA did a lot of cool stuff. So, I mean, we've had a lot of wave-based bosses like Nilo and Monkey Room. I think overall, people are definitely mixed on whether they hate or like the wave-based stuff because it goes on for quite a while. But I think it'd be interesting to try to get the wave thing right, where most people actually like it. Like I know, I feel like the Monkey Room, for example. I think if the volatile monkeys exploded and I killed other monkeys, that would be so much fun that would actually kind of really help with it. Um, and yeah, I mean, just stuff like that, stuff that like kind of feel like you're enjoying it, or like even like make it a bit more consistent. Where if you use the correct style, you never miss. Just there's random stuff about the Monkey Room. It kind of like feels slow, and a lot of people kind of dislike it. So if we could somehow balance out a wave-based room where it actually feels fun, and you're not just like, oh, this sucks. Um, but beyond that, I do like a lot of the specials like the Warden does of like a shadow appears on the floor and you want to run away from it, but you can also run towards it. Like different like things you see, like different like patterns of attacks, and you dodge it in different ways. Definitely an element like that in the Raids 4 for sure. Just a lot of cool stuff you can do. Just once again, it all comes down to pathing. Like I feel like most of the cool stuff comes down to pathing, because it's just that's the thing about old school. It's so unique because most games you kind of like you have a keyboard, you press W, you kind of move every frame. You're not just on a 6 tick cycle or a 0.6 second tick cycle. So yeah, it's just all the movement stuff is the main thing really.
I like where your head's at on that. And if
Mm.
Jagex comes out with Raids 4 and we see a lot of the ideas that you just pitched today, then we know who to thank at that point.
Yeah.
So Jagex Kirby just designed your next raid free of charge. You can thank him after this. Kirby, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And for my own sake, I really hope that you'll come out with some new guides for the upcoming TOA combat achievements after you've had a chance to play with those for a bit. Can you tell everyone where they can find you on the different social media platforms?
Sure. So you can check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/MolGoatKirby. You can check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/MolGoatKirby. On YouTube, I think youtube.com/MolGoatKirby works. Let me flash
Yeah, let's
MolGoatKirby. Let me
double
check if it works.
check.
I'm pretty sure it should work. Yep, that takes me. Okay, yeah, it doesn't work. Um, and yeah, but those are my social. I have a Discord as well. You can join. I don't have it memorized the code, so but you could if you go to my Twitch chat, there's a command for it. !Discord. You can find then that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I'll link all of those down below. So if you guys like really exciting PVM content, you want to get better at PVM content or take on combat achievements, please go check out Kirby's guides. I've used them myself. They're awesome and it's worth a look. Kirby, thank you again so much for coming on, man. It's been fun.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.